Good afternoon, everyone. This is Pastor Lynne with Thursday Tea with Pastor Lynne. I'm so excited to be with you on today. Listen, we're trying a new format, so I pray that this format would be more beneficial for you to interact with us. Let me tell you what I need you to do. First, what I want you to do is as we talk about the tea today, I want you to get something to sip on so you can relax and just enjoy the moment. And then what I want you to do is I want you to like, I want you to share, I want you to put those emojis up. We're also on YouTube Live right now too. Yay, I'm so excited about what God is doing. If you're on YouTube, we also want you to like, we want you to subscribe for us and interact with us, guys. Don't just give us your comments, but ask us questions so that we can respond to what it is that you have, your questions, your concerns, that we may have an opportunity to respond to that. So put it in the comments. We will make sure that as they are lifted up, that we will respond to your comments. And I'm just excited today that I have one of my spiritual daughters with me. I just love her so much. I miss her so much. It's so great to have her with me as we will be talking about women in ministry and mental health. Women, listen, women. We can't just do ministry without dealing with our mental health. We have some stuff we got to deal with if we're going to be successful. So let me just read you a little bit about Narkesia, and then I'm going to turn it over to her so she can give you a little bit more tea about herself. So this is Narkesia Swanigan. She was affectionately known as Keisha. She is an ordained minister, passionate about carrying out the mandate of the Lord as God has entrusted to her. Keisha is an anointed and appointed vessel who has dedicated her life to serving God. Keisha has a passion for ministry and a burning desire for individuals to have an intimate relationship with the Lord and to know and walk in the full capacity, not just part capacity, the full capacity God has purposed for their lives. Keisha understands that as people commit to walking in obedience to what God has called them to do, the manifested word and the blessings of God become evident and inspires others to follow. Keisha has been graced with the ability to share the uncompromising word of God with boldness, power, and simplicity. Listen, if you have never heard this young woman speak, you need to hear her speak, not just speak. If you have never seen her carry you into worship, y'all need to check her out. Keisha is a licensed marriage and family therapist with a master's degree in counseling psychology from the University of San Francisco and a bachelor's degree from the University of California, Davis. Keisha is married to her college sweetheart. I call him OJ. It's Orinthio, right?
Orinthio.
Orinthio Swanigan, and is the proud mother of two amazing children, Anna and Omari. I just saw pictures of them. I cannot believe how big they are. So can you all, my Facebook friends, my YouTube friends, can you all welcome Minister Narkesia Swanigan?
Thank you, everyone. It is certainly a pleasure for me to be here with you all today. And thank you to my spiritual mothers. Thank you to Pastor Lynne for inviting me. It's one thing to have someone that you hold in high regard, who has been a spiritual mentor to you in many capacities over time. That's in your life, that you hold near and dear to you. It's another thing when they're operating in ministry and they, trust the gift and so forth that's in you, and they know what's in you, and they welcome you to use that on their platform. So I'm so appreciative to you for this, and so humble to have this opportunity. And I look forward to just, sipping tea. I was gonna say breaking bread, but sipping
we can break bread too.
Today. Getting all into the tea. I left my water inside, so I'm gonna be good and ready for to sip on some when I get back inside. But just ready to enjoy this time with you ladies, and dive into what God has for us to discuss today.
Yeah, wonderful. I am so excited. So let's get into this. I'm excited to really talk about women in ministry and how important it is for us to make sure that we're dealing with our mental health. I was sharing with you earlier, I was in a meeting and I did not realize that there is an incline of men and women in ministry, and that they're calling a pastoral suicide, has gone up. And so that tells me that it's important that we deal with this mental health issue, right? This issue that we typically in the Black community, if we're going to be honest, it's kind of a demonized word, right? Is we don't talk about, we don't have mental health issues. We just pray and take it to Jesus, and everything is going to be okay. Um, so while we're waiting for her to come back in, let's just keep going. So I just want to talk to you today as we are talking about women in ministry and mental health. Women in ministry and mental health. This is a really serious conversation that we need to start having so that we can deal with our mental instability. So as we look at this story about Naomi and Ruth, we know that Naomi is a great example of someone who has gone through trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma. Naomi, one who not only did she lose her husband, but she lost two sons back to back. And after she lost her son, she had to make a decision on whether or not she was going to carry her daughter-in-laws with her, right? So she made a decision to tell her daughter-in-laws to go on, move on, go back to what it was you were doing, because I ain't got nothing to offer you, right? This whole mental health issue, this that's happening right now. And as we look at Naomi's life, as we look at all the trauma that Naomi had piled on her, the loss of her husband, the loss of her children, having to now take the responsibility of not just caring and providing for her own mental health, but she also had her daughter-in-law now. She had to be concerned about her stability as well as going and trying to figure out where we going to stay. Like, we don't have no man to take care of us no more. So where are we going to stay? How are we going to do this thing? And so in talking about that, we see in the Bible where Naomi is in such a state where she begins to respond to people, don't even call me by my name. Like, God's hand is so heavy against me that I don't have it right now, right? I don't have what's in me right now to deal with this. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we have trauma after trauma after trauma after trauma, and it feels like we've been left alone to deal with this thing. It feels like we have no other recourse but to just throw in the towel and let it be the way it be. Let life fall the way it falls. How do we deal with that? How do we handle that? I'm not sure if you're back with us, Keisha. All right. Well, we're just gonna keep going until she makes it back on.
Okay,
There
there we
she
go. And I
is.
am. I moved. Yeah, no. Can you hear me?
I can. I can.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Okay, wonderful. So I moved to another area because it seems like the Wi-Fi wasn't working well where I was. And so I'm just gonna turn that air down so I can make sure you guys can hear me. And I apologize for that.
Oh,
I
no
didn't want to
problem. You're
have these
back with us.
interruptions going. So I said, you know what, let's just move. But yeah, when it comes to trauma and especially, speaking to Naomi, I know that's something that many of us can relate to. Even myself, having gone through different things in my lifetime. My testimony, my personal testimony, I was raised in a household where, according to what my mom shared with me, from about the age of 2 until the age that I was 12 years old, my father struggled with alcoholism. And so there was a lot of different things that transpired in my household during those early developmental years, where, my father would get drunk and he would become abusive. When he wasn't drinking, he was fine. We would have a good time. We would do a lot of things in our family. He would, train my brothers and I in sports, and we would go to church and we would do all these wonderful things. But as long as that addiction was there, as long as it was present, those joyous moments were only circumstantial. and they were very short lived. And so I grew up with a lot of trauma. I grew up very quiet, very reserved, very shy. I was told, as many of us could probably relate to, what happens in this house stays in this house. So I
Yeah.
didn't talk to anybody about what was going on. No one knew anything that we were suffering behind closed doors, except for, of course, probably close family members who said
Yeah.
nothing or did anything. Or perhaps they did, but I wasn't aware of that. So this was something that we dealt with day in, day out. And I remember going to school, being in elementary school, and wondering, would my mother still be alive when I got home? Being the one to call the police at times, to try to break up things, and being the child crying, standing right there asking, can you please stop? Those sorts of things. So I could definitely relate to feeling that feeling that, Naomi had, where it's like, there's so much going on that I'm dealing with at this time that, I don't even want to be called by my name. I don't even want to be referenced as, this woman of God, or this person that you guys are looking up to, because there's just a lot going on within me. And so it really pressed, the desire to go into the mental health field, because there's a lot of things that happens behind closed doors that just that's not talked about in the church, that's not talked about in the Black community. Matter of fact, mental health is something that is discouraged in the Black community. It's something that we're just now starting to accept, and just now starting to talk about.
Wow. That's okay. We're going to keep going as Minister Keisha was saying. So obviously the enemy don't want us to talk about this subject, right? He don't want us to move and heal and do great things in the kingdom of God in our right mind, with the right emotions. Though the enemy is a little angry right now, but you know what? We're going to talk about it anyway. The devil just going to have to be mad, because we are going to deal with this issue about mental health in the Black community, and how we as the Black community and the Black church have ignored it over the years. And it is now time for us to step up and start paying attention. I see you, Charles. Thank you for that clap. Amen. Amen. Mental health is a big thing. As Minister Keisha was sharing, I remember going through some things in my life, just as an adult, going through trying to be in ministry, being hurt by the church, and it just compiling one thing after the other, after the other. And I remember getting to a place in my life where I felt like it was just too much. I didn't have anybody to talk to. I felt like if I said anything to anybody, they were going to ostracize me. I was going to be deemed not worthy enough to walk in ministry, or preach and teach and lead people. I felt like this was something that I had to deal with on my own, and trying to deal with it on my own almost cost me my life. I actually contemplated, I sat and I wrote out and I thought about, how can I end it? Much like Naomi. Naomi was like, listen, I'm not even worthy of you even mentioning my name. Don't call me by my name. I'm not worthy of the name that was given to me. And that's kind of how I was feeling. I was kind of feeling like I'm not even worthy to be here. And I don't, since I don't have anybody to talk to, how do I deal with this? And my recourse was, let's just end it all. Let's just end it all. How many of you have ever felt that way? You just felt like it's too much. And I just feel like there has to be another way to deal with this. How do we as Black people, how do we as the Black church begin to deal with mental illness that is killing our community? Now, this is not a subject that's just for women in ministry. This is something that we as a people have to deal with. It's killing us. It's killing our community. Our children are unable to deal with this. Our children are losing their minds, right? Because we've never given them permission or given them the tools to deal with the trauma and the emotional abuse that they've lived with or had to deal with in their life, what they've experienced, what they've seen. They haven't dealt with that, and we haven't given them permission to deal with it. And so, what we're finding is we're raising up a generation of angry children, a generation of angry men and angry women who don't know how to deal with this mental illness. And so they're taking matters into their own hands. They're turning to drugs, they're turning to alcohol. Some of them are turning to sex. Some of them are just taking their lives. We have got to begin to give them permission to get the help that they need. I remember I was once told that all we need to do is pray, and all we need to do is seek God, read our scripture, come to go to church, and everything's going to be okay, right? And that definitely is not the case. That definitely is not the case. Because I was told that, I didn't think there was any help for me. I didn't think there was any help. I thought that I had to figure this thing out all by myself, and that somehow going to a mental health counselor was an omen. And I'm glad that one day I reached out and I shared with my spiritual father that I was having those suicidal thoughts. I was ready to check out. I couldn't, if the church was hurting me, I was surely doomed, right? I was like, this is done. And I began to go to counseling sessions to help me navigate through these things. And I think it's important that we as the church, we as a Black community, that we deal with our emotional, our mental, and our physical traumas that we have experienced in life, especially if we're going to raise up a generation that is going to learn how to love themselves and love others. It's hard to love others when you don't even love yourself. It really is. Thank you, Keisha, so much for coming back on with us.
Yeah.
Listen, I was saying the devil must be really mad. He don't want us to talk about this
Oh,
situation, okay?
let me tell you, I have never, this is the first time, the first platform where I have shared the details of my testimony.
Wow.
So when I tell
Wow.
you I'm not surprised at the opposition, I am not surprised at the opposition. It said that my phone was hot. So, it's just like, if it's not one thing, it's another, but it's all good. I'm back in another area. So hopefully things are good. But yeah, I definitely agree with you. It's so important to love ourselves first. One thing that I say to my patients oftentimes when I'm meeting with them and when we're starting to work together is that you have to first, when you get on a plane, everybody's, gone on a trip or something, right? Like,
Mhm.
even if it's just like to SoCal or somewhere and you're only going an hour away. But what's the first thing that the stewardess says or the flight attendant when you get on? It says, in the event of an emergency, you have to do what? That the airbags will drop down and that you have
Put
to
it on you
secure it on
first.
your face first. So if you
Yeah.
don't love yourself, if you're not taking care of yourself,
Mm.
you're not, as a ministry leader or what have you, you're not going to be effective to anyone else. And so it's so important to deal with the things that we may be encountering. And so I'm so glad that we're talking about women in ministry and about mental health because as women, we carry a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
We carry a lot, and we have to be okay with saying, I'm not okay. There's power in being able to say, like, I'm not okay, and allowing people to come alongside of you and
Mm.
you along. And I'm so happy. I'm so grateful to God that in the season that I was serving, that I was not okay, but God intended for me to link up with Pastor Lynne, knowing that she had been someone who had gone through similar situations, and she had a mentor that helped her through and that guided her through. And Pastor Lynne was one person that just wanted to make sure that I took care of me, that I was dealing. She knew what was already inside of me, but encouraged me to focus on, my well-being in terms of its relation to my spiritual being, my spiritual well-being. And so some statistics I like to share with you ladies is that 23% of pastors 23% of pastors have acknowledged that they struggle with some form of mental health. And so when we're talking about illness, it could just be anxiety. We know people deal with anxiety all the time. That's not uncommon. Depression. And here's the thing about stigma in mental health in the Black community. Because you deal with any kind of mental health issues does not mean that there's something wrong with you.
That's right. That's right.
It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. We all know that we go through different trials, different tests, and the Bible talks about how it's for it's to strengthen us and it's to mature us, so that after, we know in the book of James how it talks about coming to joy, so that after patience has its full course, right? So the purpose is to strengthen us for what God has called us to do,
Yeah.
so that we can walk in the full capacity that He's destined for our lives. And so it's nothing wrong with that. That's the first thing that I like to dispel as I talk about, statistics. It's okay. What's important is that we realize that, this is something that we're dealing with, and we take the time to take care of ourselves, whether it's seeking help, whether it is that, we have people spiritually that come alongside of us, or whether we say we want to go to a professional. And there's nothing wrong with that either. I had someone who messaged me on social media after they saw that I had got the vaccine. And they asked me, this is particularly interesting because you're a person of faith. And so, do you consult God about what you do? Do you pray to God first? Did God tell you to get the vaccine? This, and that. Let me tell you guys, since we look, I know Pastor Lynne keeps it real. So since we keeping it real and we talking about sipping on tea and stuff, let me give you this tea. God gave us common sense before He gave us anything, okay? And so He created everything, when He created the earth, the sun, the moon, the stars, when He created the doctors and the physicians and all that stuff, yes, God is our ultimate source, but He has created resources for us. So, the Bible talks about not being so heavily minded that we're no earthly good.
Come on.
We don't want to sit back and we're so heavily minded. We're so super spiritual that everybody else is going on and everybody else is fine. And we didn't got left behind because we
Someone just asked, is it okay to ask for help? Yeah.
It is absolutely okay.
Absolutely.
The Bible talks about, those who are afflicted and different things among us, let us go to the elders, let us go to the leaders. And so if, and we know we're talking about, we know that we're talking about a spiritual, that was a spiritual context, but there's a spiritual context to everything. And there's also a natural context. And so if we need help, and the spiritual people among us may not be equipped with, say, the mental health background and so forth. Yes, it's okay to go and ask for help. It's okay to, go to a mental health professional or seek out. It's okay. This is what I say to people. Even if you're not comfortable, at least go and hear it out. And if it doesn't sit well with you when you go, if it doesn't bear witness with your spirit, if you don't feel like, oh my goodness, this is what I needed, thank you, Lord, I'm so glad that I finally took that step. If it doesn't fit well with you, sit well, okay. But don't shut yourself off to something again because we're being too spiritually minded. Amen.
Oh God. Oh God. I often say we spend so much time being okay with going to the doctor for them to cut us open and fix our heart or fix some of our other organs. But then when it comes to mental health, that's just a spiritual thing. No, God gave doctors. He gave them the education, the wherewithal to help you navigate through whatever it is that you're dealing with. You said something very profound that it doesn't mean something is wrong with you. And so why wait till something becomes wrong?
Thank you.
Before you get help, right? Don't wait till you go off on the deep end and hurt somebody. Let's get some mental health issues taken care of now. We're in a time right now where we are dealing with a pandemic that has systemically taken over our community, right? Like it has disproportionately affected us in every way. We are dealing with racism at an all-time high, an attack on our community. Like we have trauma after trauma after trauma. Even while we're speaking, I was just before we got on, someone had just given me some more bad news. And so we have trauma after trauma after trauma. And then we say to ourselves, we don't need to take care of that. God gonna handle that. All we need to do is stand strong. Well, if you're not mentally able to stand strong, how are you gonna stand?
Right.
And so that is something that we absolutely need to dispel. I do have a question. How important is it for the Black family to deal with these mental health issues in order for them to be healthy?
Yeah, so that's something that's really important to me is whole health, right? So you want to be healthy spiritually, physically, emotional, mentally, right? And so when it talks about the in terms of the Black family, that's really important. And here's why. Because the reality of the matter is that when it comes to mental health, that it's either a natural thing, meaning that it's something that runs within the family, it's something that runs genetically, or
Okay.
it could be something that's environmental. So as Pastor Lynn and I were sharing that there were certain things that we had encountered that brought trauma along in our lives. And so it's imperative to talk about it and to deal with it because we have to let each other know that it's okay. If we want to send the message out globally amongst the church, amongst our community, the Black community, it's imperative that we start at home. And once we begin to dispel things at home, then we can move out further. Here's the thing, if our home life is not together, we're not going to be effective in serving in any other areas of ministry.
Absolutely.
So that's the reason why it's so important for the Black family to start at home. And here's the thing, too. There's a shortage of mental health workers in the state of California. So before I even became a therapist, that's what led to me deciding, like, let me go get my master's and let me get on the ground working. Because sitting back here in this office and doing administrative work in the psychology field or in the mental health field, that's not going to help anything. We have a shortage. We need some more people that look like us out there in the field. And so here's the thing, with the shortage of mental health professionals, the mental health community is going to be looking to faith-based communities for support.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and the sad thing is that 49% of pastors say that they don't even talk about mental health in their church. So if we have the home is not talking about it and the church is not talking about it, where else do we get the message that it's okay? How else do we restructure the mindset of the Black community that it's okay to get help, that it's okay to go to therapy, that it's okay to talk about it? If it's a taboo within the home, if it's a taboo within the church structure, and we can't talk about these things, now we perpetuate a society. We perpetuate these systematic systems where people are not getting the assistance that they need.
Wow.
And then the disproportion continues. And so it's so important that we have these conversations in our home. It's so important that we get educated. I take the time when I'm meeting with families, even here in the emergency department, to provide psychoeducation, to explain to them what this means, to explain to them what the causes of suicide. With COVID, we're seeing more and more cases. So I mentioned earlier backstage before we started the broadcast that I'm at Kaiser right now. I do some part-time work in the emergency department doing assessments. And before I moved to the emergency department, I was actually in outpatient working with the adult population. And even before that, working in a community-based setting with children, youth, and families in the mental health system. So I've done mental health work across the span of just different populations and different communities. And it's so important not to assume that people know. It's so important that we get educated, that we go to people who can educate us and to help us navigate through these difficult times. It's imperative.
Wow, I agree. I agree. For far too long, we have had that happens in our house stays in our home mentality, right? I know that's the community. That's what I grew up in. My generation grew up with that, and I know that we have, unfortunately, we have shared that same mentality with your generation.
Yeah.
So, and it's hard to change a mindset that is so deeply embedded. So, the next question that we have then, how important is it for the Black church to be more visible in the community when it comes to mental health awareness?
Yeah, it's so important that we're speaking on these things. We have like the breast cancer awareness month and all those different things, but April is actually the suicide prevention awareness month. So we're actually right now in the suicide prevention awareness month. And then I believe November, they have the domestic violence awareness month.
Yeah.
Like these are things that we need to be bringing to our community because it's more and more prevalent. And here's why. We have children that are being born with drugs in their system. So we're coming out of the era where, there was the high a pandemic with all of the drug use. And so we have all these UTOX children who are UTOX. When I say UTOX children, they were positive. They were tox positive when they were born. So now they're adults. They're not raising their children. The grandparents are raising the children. The grandparents don't know what to do because they're presenting with all of these behaviors. And so it's so important for the Black church to be able to link up with community providers and to be able to there's other churches in the community that have staff who actually they refer their members to for therapy, like Capital Christian Center and Bayside and other type of churches that have those type of resources. But it's important that we provide that navigation, that we provide that pathway where we can at least inform people of what's available in the community, because sometimes there's this distrust when it
Yeah.
comes to mental health. That families will often say to me when I was working in the community-based agency, you guys are part of the system. And I'll say, oh no, I'm not part of any system. Like we actually try to keep children in the home with their families. And there would be times where I have to legally make not a suicide, but child abuse report. And the CPS social workers would be upset with me because they would say, oh, the therapist is right here. I would encourage the families to self-report and I would support them. And they would say, the social worker would be upset. And I say, yeah, I'm here with the family. This is why I'm working with this family. Now, what resources, what do you have that you could come alongside and support this family? So it's very important that the church is one of the agencies that, one of the change agents that can come alongside of families and individuals that are suffering, dealing with mental health and emotional distress type issues, to be able to link them to supports, to lead them, and to help navigate. Because as I said earlier, we're coming to a day and age where there's a shortage of mental health workers. And we actually have a rise, especially now with this pandemic, we have a rise of mental health issues. We have a rise of suicide. And it's very prevalent in the church. So they need to hear it going out from the pulpit forward among just different leaders and so forth, just normalize it so that decreases stigma when you normalize it, and also validating their experience that it's okay, making sure we get that message out to them that it's okay, you're not alone, you're not the only one, there's nothing crazy about you, let us help you get the help that you need.
Yeah, I like that, normalizing that mental health is okay. It's okay. You're right. We normalize everything else, but we won't normalize that, right?
Absolutely.
As we talk about like this 23% of pastors who have articulated that they have some type of form of emotional trauma or mental trauma. To many, that may not seem high, but that's a pretty high number. And that's just the people who've actually talked about it. We're not talking about the ones who are still in secret and not admitting it. How would then we encourage pastors ministry leaders, faith-based organization leaders to deal with their own trauma to help them become healthy. I know it's very difficult. I know that we don't want to hear that there's something wrong with us. Let me just say, it took me a long time to even admit that I was having problems, right? Because I'm a strong Black woman, and I was raised by strong Black women and men, and we just don't have mental illnesses. We don't have those problems, right? There's no emotional trauma going on. It wasn't until everything that I had dealt with in my childhood um, was compounded with what I experienced from the church that became so overwhelming that I really thought I was losing my mind. I was ready. I was ready to check out of this. It was just too much. And so when I think about myself, I think about how then can we help other pastors, other leaders come to grips with how they are doing mentally and emotionally.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. We all are dealing with different stressors. Any way you slice it, we all have an amount of stressors that we're dealing with. And here's something that I heard. I was at, I don't remember if it was a prophetic conference or a healing conference. I was up in Reading at Bethel Church Reading. I think this was back in 2015. And I heard this white pastor say, you know, my wife and I, we have regular monthly check-ins. We go, we check in. It's not because anything is wrong with our marriage, but it's because we like to be proactive. We like to be preventative. And I realized that he was talking about they go to couples counseling once a month. And I was like, wow, how powerful would that be? How much stronger would families be? How much stronger would pastors be? How much stronger would church leadership be if we were proactive and preventative, and not saying that I have depression or I have bipolar bipolar depression or anything like that, but just saying that I know that I have a responsibility to this community. I have a spiritual responsibility to this to this whole region, to this area. I know what God has called me to do and who God has called me to be. And then I realize that there are stressors and different things going on. And I just need to be proactive. I just need to be preventative. I need to take care of me. And so I think messaging things in the sense of we need to be proactive. It's important to make sure that, you know, we are coming from a fresh well, that we don't have anything that is subconsciously, so things that we're not aware of, that is seeping into what we are feeding out into our congregation, and that we set the example. A lot of people turn away from the church because they feel like the church is hypocrite. They feel that, you know, there's not the realness. You know, we're in a society in a day and age where they talk about being 100 and just keeping things all the way real. And so a lot of people who are in the streets or who have turned away from God, they know more Bible than a lot of people who are actually in the church. But they turn away because they feel like the church is just not being authentic or being transparent. And so if we're able to send a message that it's okay, that I have these check-ins, that I'm being preventative, and that these things are necessary, just like you go to the gym and you exercise regularly to keep yourself healthy, and we make these comparisons and we send the narrative that, you know, it's okay to go to the doctor for a checkup. It's okay to go to the gym and work out. With the same way, it's okay to go see a therapist and just to have someone to talk to and to help you navigate through different things that you go through in life. It's okay. That would be so powerful. And what if we actually looked at it from the lens of this is the way that the enemy tries to keep the church crippled? What if we just call it out?
Come on now.
Say, you know, we're going to take mental health off the table. We're not going to allow mental health to be one of the tactics that the church has remained bound by.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's so important that when we talk about helping pastors, become comfortable and getting the services and supports that's needed for themselves, that we remember that we are held accountable for the things that we say and the things that we do, and
Absolutely.
that the blood of those who we are responsible for, their blood is on our hands. And so, because we have that level of responsibility, it is important to make sure that we take care of ourselves and that we make sure that we're sending the proper message and that we're setting the proper example, and we're showing them with our actions by us taking the step first that it's okay to get the assistance that's needed.
Wow. Wow. That was good. That's good. I like the idea of understanding and realizing the responsibility that you have,
Mhm,
but the responsibility that we have to ourselves to
mhm,
be that example. And when we're taking self care, when we're dealing with our own emotional traumas, then we teach others how to do that. One of my spiritual daughters, we were talking about resting, and so anybody know me, you know me, Keisha, I'm still the same. I don't rest. I am going from the moment my feet hit the floor till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I'm just going. My mind never shuts down, so I don't sleep
mhm,
well because my mind just never stops. And we were talking. We were in a meeting, and they were talking about self care, right?
mhm.
Taking care of yourself. And she said to me something that has stuck with me. She said, "I need you to show me how to do self care, how to
There you
take care
go.
of yourself. How you're my leader. I look to you, so I need you to show me how to do that." Well, at first I was like, I don't want that responsibility to show
Mhm,
you how to do that, right? But then God brought to me, she's your responsibility. And part of your responsibility is living a life of what she should resemble and what she should move towards versus you speaking at her and telling her what she should do.
mhm,
And so now I'm on this journey now where I'm like, oh, I have to take care of Lynn. I have to, it's okay not to go to some meetings. It's okay to deal with the emotional trauma that you've been dealt with that day. It's okay to say, I got to check out for the day because I need to deal with what I'm feeling. And far too long, I have not done that. I have been
mhm,
one that says, I just need to push my way through.
mhm,
Um, I need to keep going. And if I keep going, I'm going to be okay. I'm forgetting all that I learned going through the counseling sessions, right?
mhm, mhm.
All of that. But
Yeah,
being reminded in new and creative ways that this whole mental health thing is really a self care,
yeah.
taking care of yourself, dealing with those issues that you see when you see them and not when they are. Yeah, let's be proactive, let's be preventative, let's not be reactive. And I
Mhm,
think that we are a culture that is very reactive versus proactive or preventative. So
mhm.
that was good. I love that. One last question I do have. Let's talk about how we, as a Black community, as Black women, as Black people, as a Black church, how can we do better? How can we change our narrative?
Yeah. So the narrative is really important, right? When it comes to how we are seen as a people, we have to we have to emulate what it is that we want to subscribe to. So if it's, in terms of ministry, we want to be completely whole.
Mhm.
So if we're going to change the narrative, then we don't give people an opportunity to say, well, this person was dealing with this, or this pastor committed suicide, or these people within this church did this or that. But we're taking the time to say, we're going to do a survey of our people. We're going to see what the needs are, and we're going to set the example so that we can take the ammunition out of, these people, out of other people's hands. And so it's so important that we become educated. It's so important that we utilize common sense, and that we utilize the tools and the resources that are at our disposal. It's so important that, we admonish one another, not just spiritually, but again, we're talking about the whole person. Here's the thing, times have changed, and I know a lot of people can attest to that. Like, I used to be at church every day of the week growing up, and it just seemed like we still had nothing but time. And now it's like, shoot, I only have 2 kids, y'all. I only have 2. And I feel like I be struggling, like, okay, I'm just not gonna be able to do this, and I'm not gonna be able to do that. And it's okay. It's important to realize what your 100% is, what it is that you can do and what you can't do, so that that guilt and that shame and all those things don't attach itself to you, and you find yourself depressed, or you find yourself on edge and feeling anxious and things like that all the time. So that is the way that we're able to kind of like take these things that are not being used against us, is when we recognize what it is that we need, and we attend to what our needs are. And as times change, we have to change. We as the body of Christ, and then we as a church. And so, because there's a rise in the prevalence of mental health, it's important that the church begins to talk about it. I know I gave the stats on the pastors, but it says 65% of church-going family members of those with mental health want their church to talk openly about mental health.
Wow.
65%. They have family members with mental health, and they don't know what to do. And so they're looking to guidance from the church. That's the way that the question that you just asked, Pastor Lynne, we talk about it. 59% of those actually suffering from mental health say the same. So those people who actually have mental health issues, 59% of them, they want their church to talk openly about it. So when we are open about the things that we go through, as I said, my phone said that it was hot, that the battery it shut down on me right at the beginning of this session of this talk that we're doing. Why? Because it was the first time that I had openly shared my testimony of what I experienced as a child. So that shows that there are things that are going on that the enemy doesn't want it to get out, because this is a way to keep the church, this is a way to keep the Black community crippled.
Yes.
And to bring shame upon the people. Why? Because when shame is utilized, people stay silent. But when that shame is gone, when the chains are broken, right? Then people are free, and they could be like that woman at the well that's able to say, "Come see a man." Like, it's like when we get saved all over again, where they're all out and they want to share everything. And that's the important part that we get to, is that we don't have to, hold things in, and we don't have to feel ashamed about things. But whom the Son set free is free indeed. So whatever it is that we're dealing with, whatever it is that we're going through, whatever it is that we realize is going on in our community, talk about it. Let's talk about it. Let's have some seminars. Let's have some workshops. Let's bring some people.
That's right. Talitha Floyd said that that God will get his glory in all of this, right? A self-mandate, she just said. So absolutely, God will get his glory. Thank you, Jeffrey, for your comment of our conversation. I think this is a great conversation. And God is absolutely going to get his glory.
Absolutely.
People are going to be saved, and I think you're right. We have to change our narrative by educating ourselves. I'm as a pastor, to hear 69% of my congregants want to hear and talk about mental health,
because it's their everyday reality, right?
Yeah, I mean, it is. That is like it's a reality check, but it's also a thing that says you got to get it together. Like there people need this. People need for you to articulate and to speak up. And silence is not an option anymore.
And one thing that the church has to remember, and its leadership, is that Jesus met the people where they were.
Yeah.
And so in doing so, we meet our people where they are. With no judgment, with no condemnation or anything like that, but we meet them where they are, and we let them know that it's okay.
And I think that's part of the problem with people too, needing to have the permission to deal with this trauma is because we as the church, we have demonized it. We have said that if you have mental illnesses, there's something wrong with you. And so we are either going to ostracize you, we're going to reprimand you, we're going to make you feel shame about how you're feeling about the emotional trauma and the mental trauma, or even the physical trauma that you have endured. And I think we do have to change our narrative. It is time for the church to step up. I have made a commitment that I want to lead a church that is going to be a church that is attentive not just to their spiritual well-being, but attentive to their whole being. I want people to be whole. Jesus wants us whole, right? He said that he wanted to heal us so that we may be made whole, not half, not a quarter, but that we may be made whole.
Absolutely.
And so then if that is God's desire, that people may be whole, then my desire too as a pastor should be that the people I'm leading be made whole, that they live a whole prosperous life, a whole abundant life. And so hearing those numbers really tell me we're on the right track. People desire, people want to be healed. People are tired of being in this sinkhole. People want to be pulled out of this miry clay so they can live this abundant life in Jesus. Enjoy the journey. How are we going to enjoy the journey if we're so overwhelmed with life issues and circumstances? We want to enjoy this journey, enjoy our relationship with God. Wow, we could talk about this forever. Before we close out, Keisha, can you just give them just a couple of resources that they can tap into, that someone who may be in need of some mental health issues and need some resources, can you just kind of give them some resources to help them?
Yeah, absolutely. So I don't have these numbers available for you, and I apologize. I will make sure that I make it available to Pastor Lynne, so perhaps it can be posted and added to this afterwards. But there is a national suicide hotline. I believe that can be Googled. So, you can Google the number, or you can just make sure that if you come in contact with someone who is feeling suicidal or someone who's just always down, make sure that they have that number. I tell my teens and my children that I used to work with to save it in their phone, because in the event of emergency, you're not going to go looking for that card. You're going to be scrambling, trying to, find, where you put it at. So put these numbers in your phone if you know that is something that someone's going to need, and that way you're able to give it to them in the time of an emergency. So there's a national suicide hotline. Thank you so much. I see that that is popular.
Thank you.
And then Sacramento County. So if you do not have insurance, say like Kaiser or Blue Cross or something like that, if you have Medi-Cal insurance, it's okay. And that's the other thing. Sometimes people are like, well, I don't have insurance, I can't go get a therapist. Sacramento County has an access line. They have a mental health adult and a mental health children access line. And you can call that line. It'll take about 30 days. So it's important that we be proactive and we call them if we know that there's a need, so that we ourselves or our loved ones, we can get them set up to get the assessment needed so that they can have the resources at their disposal as needed. And the agency that I used to work for, they were contracted with Sacramento County. So before COVID, there was a time where we were meeting with children and youth at their school, community, in their homes, and I would do therapy with them right there wherever it was convenient for their family. So that's through Sacramento County Mental Health. They have an access line. And then also Sacramento County through Turning Point Community Center, they have an urgent care. So that's right there on Stockton Boulevard, and it's walk-in available. You can call them or you can walk in, but they have an urgent care mental health clinic that even if you don't have insurance, you can walk in there and they can give you the assistance you need, even if you don't have insurance or if you have Medi-Cal. So those are things that you want to, reach out for, you want to do if you don't have your own private insurance where you can go through a private mental health therapist.
Thank you. Thank you. We'll definitely make sure that gets into our comments so people will be able to go in and look at that. Again, thank you so much, Keisha, for being with me. You have been truly amazing, informative. I love it. I love the way you brought it to us in a way that can be very receptive and received. So thank you again for joining us. Listen, my Facebook family, my new are now YouTube friends too, right? Thank you guys so much for joining us. I pray that this has helped you. I pray that you will share this video with someone so that they too can be helped and get the resources that they need to deal with any emotional, physical, or mental trauma that they may be going through. Again, this is Thursday Tea with Pastor Lynne. We come every other Thursday to talk about issues, and we bring the Bible to the issues that we are dealing with. Understand, we are dealing with nothing that is new under the sun. They had mental illness in the Bible, and they're still have it today, and God has given us what we need to deal with this. Thank you, Pastor Sylvester. We love you too. So yes, next week join us as I will have my guest will be Kim from Oakland. I'm sorry, from Tapestry Church. Kim Emerson, phenomenal woman of God. You don't want to miss it, as we will be talking about our community services. How do we better conserve our community? Again, thank you so much again, Minister Swanigan, for being with us. And we will have a time of meeting together again. Listen, guys, share this video, like this video, comment on this video, subscribe, hit that bell sign, hit that like button, and we promise you we will be back with you next week. We appreciate you all so much. We love you. Until next time, may God bless you. Peace.